And John, we are talking about diesel. I know you've got a lot to say, so let's get into this.
Okay, well, you want to talk about jobs first or diesel first?
Either one. You take it away.
Let's just talk about jobs because today was the monthly report. It was a pretty good report overall for the country. More than 400,000 jobs added. But in truck transportation, remember the March numbers were down from February. That had been the first time since that first month of the pandemic that there had been a decline in the truck transportation sector, but they are up. They are up pretty sharply. In fact, 13,000 jobs, which in the truck transportation sector, which is a really nice move in 1 month. There were some revisions from past figures, but nothing really major. And another thing that I think was significant is that they come out with a not seasonally adjusted number and a seasonally adjusted number, and sometimes the two go in really radically different directions. It's not always kind of hard to figure out what exactly they're doing and result there. But in this case, both the not seasonally adjusted jobs in truck transportation and the seasonally adjusted jobs in truck transportation were both up about 13 to 14,000. So I think when you put those two side by side, it suggests a pretty good growth in this sector after the 1 month that kind of raised a few eyebrows because things had started to slow down, and maybe they are slowing down in the rates in other areas. But in terms of jobs, looks pretty good.
I'm so glad to hear that. I'm sure everyone is glad to hear that jobs are up, especially when we talk about retention and trying to keep everybody here.
And John, we're looking at overall job openings. I know there's just a plethora of different job reports. You have the unemployment rate, you have stuff from ADP, you have the job openings report. We saw a little bit of a tick down in some of those other areas, but really overall growth at 11.5 million in new high score in our jobs market. With this growth and expansion, are you anticipating that there is maybe a bit of, I wouldn't say a bubble just yet, but now that we have twice as many openings as we do available labor, is that kind of concerning for you in some of these different industries?
Well, it only concerns me on a very macro basis. I've got a lot of concerns about the ability of this country to fill its jobs going forward. I mean, I'm not just talking about over the next 6 months. I'm talking about what's going on over the next 5 to 10 years. When you look at we've talked about this before, Anthony, the baby boom retiring, the numbers coming up behind it, the slowdown in immigration into this country. I'm not getting into the legal versus illegal discussion. But all of that is very concerning, and every industry in America, except maybe Hollywood movie actors, is worried about having, and professional sports athletes are worried about having enough people to do the job. So I'm not worried about any bubble. I think really, I mean, given the hit the economy's taken up to high prices, I would not have expected that in that kind of situation you'd have an unemployment rate of 3.8% and 400,000 jobs added month over month. So I think it just goes to the fact that so many baby boomers are exiting the workforce, and the numbers of people who could even potentially come in are nowhere near the exits. It's a long-term concern for me. I'm not that focused on what's going to happen over the next few months.
And I think that's very well put. Speaking of booming, let's talk about those diesel prices.
Right. So the story that the article that we wrote yesterday, and which is going to be discussed in my podcast when it drops a little later today, is about the East Coast. So the Energy Information Administration puts out a weekly report, weekly statistical report. It's a model for the most part. I mean, they do some counting of barrels, but it's also a model. The model tends to get mostly affirmed a couple of months later when the monthly numbers come out. And what it is showing is that East Coast inventories of ultra-low sulfur diesel, which is the 15 parts per million sulfur content that is the standard fuel for trucks today, are at the lowest level. Depending on how you measure it, you could almost say it's the lowest level ever. You really can't go back 10, 15 years and look at that data because that was a different world. The sulfur specs were not quite as tight. There are some numbers from about 6 to 7 years ago that are really tight, but that was after a really brutal winter where you would have expected a lot of the diesel molecules to kind of migrate into the heating oil pool. So that kind of had that going for it. To have these kind of numbers, it's about 20 million barrels. I know there's no, it's kind of, if you're just listening to that, kind of tough to get perspective. Trust me on this. This is very, very low. And you're seeing it in the physical market, the difference between spot diesel down in the Gulf Coast, this is among physical traders, and spot diesel in the East Coast, in New York Harbor, is about 60 cents per barrel. Now, that number generally might run 5 to 6 cents. So it is completely off the charts in terms of historic norms. You're at the level where you're starting to worry about some shortages. It was mentioned before that Love's did give us a quote yesterday that they've seen some spot shortages. And, these things don't announce themselves. You get a spot shortage here, you get a spot shortage there, you get an empty pump, a pump with the bag over it that signifies that it's empty at another place. And, it starts to snowball. So at these kind of numbers, it is concerning. Now, I think the one thing that you would hope is that that refiners who've been operating at less than full capacity are going to ramp up. I know that Marathon, in its earnings call this week, said something about they're going to skip some maintenance and they're going to just go full out because the market needs it. I think with these kind of numbers, I haven't run the comparison to Europe, but you've got to think that maybe the best barrel, the most profitable barrel, is to be sell it into the New York Harbor. If that happens, that kind of can break the back of this tightness. But it's very, like I said, prices are high everywhere. But the East Coast is the one place where we're really worried about supply, like maybe worried about people not being able to get it.
I know, we've got the war in Russia and Ukraine, we've got inflation, we've got U.S. exports causing some of this. Is there one thing more than the other that we can say is causing the shortages?
Well, I do think Russia is a major diesel supplier, and I think the loss of them to the market as big companies and countries stop buying from there, I think that may have pushed it over the edge. But you had a lot of demand coming out of the pandemic. You had a big fall in production around the world, oil production around the world, including the U.S. as a result of the pandemic. There's another thing that's really concerning in that U.S. production was supposed to rise by 800,000 barrels a day this year. The world really was going to need that oil. And right now, the numbers are not showing that we're going to get that. And industry executives talk about the fact that they talk about two things. Number one, they're kind of happy with the current situation. They're not going to go hog wild. They like the fact that they're making a lot of money and paying a lot of dividends, which a few years ago they weren't doing. And number two, they're saying even if we wanted to ramp up a lot, back to the earlier point, they can't find enough people to work the fields. So this is a big source of concern here. So I do think the Russia-Ukraine war was really the thing that kind of pushed everything over the edge, that last little spot. The other thing, too, is we are coming out of maintenance season. What happens is refineries, they do maintenance, big maintenance in the fall and in the spring. They do it before the summer driving season when you need a lot of gasoline, and they do it in the fall before heating oil season. That's when you look at how strong refining margins are right now, you'd think that the operating rates would be a lot higher. So let's hope that they can tack on another several percentage points because we need it.
And John, when we're looking at the current market conditions and everything that's going on, is there one variable, one factor, or maybe there are a couple that really could help reverse some of these trends that we're seeing right now?
Well, I think back to my earlier point, I think that if refiners can get their hands on crude, I think if they ramp up and you got to believe that they're going to maximize diesel production simply because it's so profitable. It makes so much more money than gasoline at this point. They can't shift 100% to diesel or shift 100% to gasoline, but they can do various tweaks and twists and squeezes and other mechanical processes and maybe try to change the blends of the crudes they buy to maximize their diesel output. So this is what could be, we hope, a classic case of the solution to high prices is high prices. It incentivizes making a lot of diesel, and that hopefully can put some more supply onto the East Coast.
John, before we let you go, is there anything else folks need to either keep in mind, or where can people find out more from you?
Well, I tweet pretty regularly on the diesel market, John H. Kingston at Twitter, so you can take a look there. And been writing a fair number of articles for FreightWaves.com. I would say that right now, watch your local diesel retailer, but next Wednesday is the day that it's only Friday, but I'm already interested to see what happens Wednesday when the weekly EIA stats comes out. And let's see what those East Coast inventories of diesel are, because right now I think that's the biggest story in the market.
John, thanks so much for joining. It's always great to have you on. We'll see you in Arkansas.
See you in Arkansas.